I will not be insulted by someone as cheap and classless as you.
The elegant dining room of Spago Beverly Hills fell silent in an instant. Every eye turned toward a tall, striking blonde woman who stood seething with rage at a table where a young black woman sat in a simple navy dress. Patricia Hartwell's manicured finger pointed directly at Celeste Williams, her voice dripping with contempt. "Do you know who I am? How dare you talk to me like that?" Her hand lashed out, sharp as a whip. The crack of the slap echoed like a gunshot against the walls of crystal and silver. A few diners gasped aloud, while others slyly raised their phones to record. "Who is she?" someone whispered. "Probably wandered in by mistake." Mocking laughter rippled through the room, but Celeste sat upright, her gaze steady, her face calm, not even a flicker of anger crossing her features. In that exact moment, Patricia had made the greatest mistake of her life, one that would shatter her carefully built world in less than a minute. Before the room could process the shock of the slap, a man's voice thundered across the restaurant, deep, commanding, undeniable. "You just put your hand on my wife?" "My wife." The sound sliced through the tension like a blade. The air grew so still that you could almost hear the beating of your own heart. The story turns back to the afternoon of October 15th, 2024. Inside a grand Bel Air mansion, the fading sunlight poured through tall windows, painting golden streaks across the marble floor. Celeste stood before an enormous wardrobe, her hand drifting across rows of dresses until she paused on a simple navy gown. "This one might work," she murmured. At 28, Celeste carried a natural beauty that needed no embellishment, warm honey-brown skin that glowed, dark eyes full of quiet intelligence, and a gentle smile that had once captured the heart of the most powerful man in her life. From the bathroom, the sound of water stopped. Adrien Williams, 35 years old, tall and confident, stepped out in a tailored charcoal gray suit. His green eyes, which had commanded the respect of the entire tech world, now fixed only on his wife. Adrien was the CEO of Nexus Innovations, the company that had revolutionized cloud computing and made him a billionaire worth over $2 billion. Yet tonight, his focus wasn't on deals or boardrooms. It was on dinner with his wife. Celeste slipped into the navy dress, a quiet reminder of her childhood in a cramped Detroit apartment. Around her neck, she fastened the silver necklace Adrien had given her on their second wedding anniversary, then studied her reflection in the mirror. The image staring back was a paradox, still the same ordinary girl she once was, yet now the partner of one of the richest men in America. Adrien stepped behind her, his arms circling her waist. "You look beautiful," he whispered, though a trace of worry lingered in his tone. Celeste knew that worry well, they had spoken of it many times. He feared the judgmental stares of strangers, people who valued designer labels more than character. "You'd rather I wore the Valentino, wouldn't you?" she asked with a half smile. But Adrien shook his head and kissed her forehead. "I fell in love with the girl in a $15 dress at a coffee shop. Don't ever change, for anyone, not even me." The memory washed over her. 3 years earlier, she had been a reading coordinator for underprivileged children, earning little but driven by passion. Adrien had met her by chance while discussing education with a barista, and her sincerity had compelled him to stay. That was the beginning of a love that defied social class. 20 minutes later, their deep blue Bentley glided down the tree-lined streets of Beverly Hills. Celeste gazed out the window at glittering boutiques and world-famous restaurants. "I always feel out of place in places like this," she admitted. Adrien squeezed her hand gently. "You belong anywhere I am. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise." They arrived at Spago, the crown jewel of Hollywood dining. Inside, golden light glowed across gowns and tuxedos. Celeste walked in beside Adrien, aware of the curious glances that flicked toward her. The restaurant manager greeted them warmly. "Your table is ready, Mr. Williams." But even in that atmosphere of wealth and prestige, Adrien leaned close to whisper, "You are the most beautiful woman here. More than that, you are the kindest." His phone buzzed. "Tokyo's calling. The Yamamoto deal hit a snag. I'm sorry. I need to take this." Celeste nodded, accustomed to business intruding on private moments. As he stepped away, she sat back, unaware that in just minutes an encounter would erupt that would thrust her name into headlines and across every social media feed in the world. Warm golden light spilled from chandeliers overhead, casting the restaurant in a glow of refined intimacy. The soft murmur of conversation added to Spago's delicate charm. Celeste had just begun to relax when her eyes caught another woman's gaze, a look that was anything but subtle. The woman, about 45, carried her disdain openly. Blonde hair styled to perfection, her sculpted face bore the unmistakable touch of cosmetic work and expensive care. She wore a white Chanel dress, likely worth more than many people's monthly salaries, and the jewels glittering on her wrist seemed designed to reflect her superiority with every movement. Celeste swallowed her discomfort, convincing herself she was being too sensitive. But the longer it lasted, the more pointed that stare became, like a sharp needle piercing the space between them. Adrien was still on his call when the woman rose from her table and strode directly toward her. Her steps carried both pride and fury, the bearing of someone about to pass judgment. In that instant, Celeste remembered her years in Detroit, when prejudice-filled stares had once turned every room into a cage. Now, the woman stood at her table, eyes raking Celeste from head to toe, thickening the air around her with silent hostility. Her voice emerged coated in false politeness, yet heavy with command. "Excuse me, but I think there's been a mistake." Celeste lifted her head, heart pounding, sensing the storm to come. The woman's expensive perfume hung in the air, tainted by the familiar stench of arrogance. "Mistake?" Celeste asked softly, steadying her voice. The woman's smile never reached her icy eyes. Tall in designer heels, her figure was sculpted by discipline and surgery alike, perfection purchased with money. "Oh, I just assumed you were lost, sitting here alone," she said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Conversations faltered, the restaurant gradually falling into silence, ears pricking for drama. Celeste felt the blood rushing in her veins, her breath heavy. "I'm not lost," she answered calmly. "I'm having dinner with my husband." The woman laughed, shrill and brittle, like glass shattering. "Your husband? I don't see anyone here. And frankly, I can't imagine how someone like you could possibly belong at Spago." Each word cut into Celeste like a blade. "Someone like you." The phrase carried the weight of every prejudice, every invisible boundary society had ever drawn around her skin color and her origins. Celeste kept her voice steady. "My husband stepped out to take a business call. He'll be back any minute." The woman smirked with cutting sarcasm. "Oh, how convenient. A mysterious husband who is always absent. Sounds more like a clumsy cover story than the truth." Then she leaned in closer, lowering her voice just enough for the entire row of tables nearby to hear. "Listen, young lady. This place has its standards. People like you don't just walk in here and claim a seat." Celeste's cheeks burned hot. "People like you?" The phrase dripped with venom, spreading like poison through the air. The eyes around her carried a dozen shades of curiosity, discomfort, even agreement. But Celeste didn't back down. "I have the right to be here, just like anyone else." The woman arched an eyebrow, her tone mocking. "A right? Let me explain rights to you. This is Spago Beverly Hills, not some corner diner. Rights don't buy you a $30 appetizer, and rights don't magically make you belong here. Look at yourself. That dress looks like it came from Target, those shoes from Payless. You're not in the same class as anyone in this room." Celeste felt her heart ache, her eyes sting, but she refused to let tears fall. "Clothes don't determine my worth. And they certainly don't give you the authority to judge me." The words surprised her, fueling her with unexpected strength. The woman laughed, loud and jagged, dripping with mockery. "Worth? I am Patricia Hartwell. My husband owns half the commercial property in Beverly Hills. We donate more to charity in a single year than you'll earn in a decade. I know everyone who matters in this city, and I can assure you, no one here wants their evening ruined by your presence." The name Hartwell meant nothing to Celeste, but the way Patricia emphasized it sent whispers rippling across the restaurant. "I'm not bothering anyone," Celeste answered firmly. "I'm simply having dinner." "No," Patricia shot back, her words sharp as blades. "You're making everyone uncomfortable. Look around. Do you see anyone here dressed like they're going grocery shopping? Anyone who looks as out of place as you?" Each sentence cut deeper, like a knife. Celeste felt herself shrinking inside, childhood memories rushing back, those countless moments she'd been told there were places she'd never belong, all because of her skin. Patricia pressed on, her tone a command. "I think you should leave, before you embarrass yourself any further." Celeste steadied her breath. "I'm not pretending to be anyone else. I'm just being myself." Patricia flicked her hand dismissively. Oh, please. It's obvious you slipped in here hoping to latch on to some wealthy man. Let me save you the trouble. No one is fooled. Everyone here can see exactly what you are. Her words splashed against Celeste like acid. To be branded a gold digger, a fraud, it went against everything she truly was. You don't know anything about me, Celeste whispered. Patricia tilted her head, her voice icy. I know enough. I know you don't belong here. I know your presence makes people uncomfortable. And I know the longer you sit here, the more pathetic you become. She leaned closer, whispering with a cruel sharpness that pierced straight into Celeste's chest. Make it simple. Leave now, and you might keep a shred of dignity. Stay, and I'll make sure this entire room sees you for what you really are. The air froze solid. Celeste felt cornered, trapped in the gaze of a predator who thrived on the suffering of others. Every instinct told her to rise and walk out, but something deep inside her resisted. Adrien's words in the car echoed in her memory, "You belong anywhere I am." And so did the countless times she had been forced into silence, forced to shrink, forced to yield. Not this time, because she knew, in her bones, that she had done nothing wrong. She didn't deserve this cruelty. Celeste clenched her hands tightly, drawing every ounce of strength into a single, steady sentence. I will not leave. I have every right to be here, and I'm not going anywhere. The words landed softly but carried the weight of defiance, striking Patricia like a slap to her pride. Her power had been denied, her dominance openly challenged. Her face flushed crimson, as if her very authority had been torn apart. For a fleeting moment, Celeste thought Patricia might storm off in rage. But instead, Patricia's voice erupted, shrill and piercing enough to fill the entire dining room. How dare you speak to me like that? Do you have any idea who I am? I will never allow someone unworthy of even living in this zip code to insult me like that. Her words cracked through the air, drowning out the gentle hum of the restaurant. And before Celeste could react, Patricia's hand whipped upward and struck her across the face with vicious speed. The sharp crack rang out like a gunshot in the frozen silence, shattering the elegance of the room. Time itself seemed to stop. Pain flared across Celeste's cheek, burning hot, spreading through her entire body. But worse than the sting was the humiliation, raw, public, undeniable. Her trembling hand lifted to the throbbing welt, her mind dazed as if trapped in a nightmare. The metallic taste of blood touched her tongue where her teeth had bitten her lip. Her left ear buzzed with a piercing ring, drowning out everything except the suddenly deafening jazz music in the background. Diners sat frozen, forks midair, wine glasses suspended, eyes locked on the scene. Patricia stood there like a victor, chest heaving, her blue eyes alight with primitive satisfaction, her hands still hovering as if savoring the violence. There, she declared, her voice booming with superiority. Maybe now you understand. Actions have consequences. You can't just walk in here, pretend you matter, and expect to be treated as someone important. Celeste's heart clenched tight. Tears welled, but she fought them back with all her strength. No, she would not cry. She would not bow her head. She would not give Patricia another victory. You just hit me, Celeste whispered, her voice faint yet unnervingly clear in the silence. Speaking the truth out loud made the bitter reality sting even sharper. Patricia smoothed her dress, her hands trembling slightly, and answered coldly, "You were aggressive. You threatened me. Everyone here saw it." Celeste's breath caught. She couldn't believe the audacity. Patricia was twisting the truth, painting herself as the victim in plain view of the entire room. "I never threatened you," Celeste said, her voice stronger now. "I was sitting here, eating dinner. You're the one who came at me. You're the one who attacked me." Patricia laughed dismissively, turning as if to address an invisible jury. Everyone saw it. She lost control. She raised her voice. She was hostile. I tried to be polite, but I was attacked by her lack of class. A few diners nearby shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting back and forth, caught between the truth they had witnessed and the power of Patricia's social standing. In this world, a Chanel dress and the Hartwell name seemed to weigh more than justice itself. But then, a calm voice broke through, steady and sharp. "That's not true. I saw everything." An older man with graying hair and kind eyes spoke from a table near the window. "This young woman never raised her voice, never acted threatening. You approached her, and you struck her, right in front of us all." His words sliced through Patricia's shield of power. Her face flushed again, and she snapped back. You don't know anything. She's the one who doesn't belong here, the one who ruined this evening. But the man's tone only grew firmer. I know enough. I just saw you assault someone weaker than you, all because of arrogance and prejudice. The room buzzed with whispers now, voices cutting through the polished air. She really hit her? Why? Just because of her clothes? Poor girl. Patricia Hartwell, this isn't the first time she's caused trouble. Every hushed word sliced back at Patricia, her mask cracking under the weight of truth. Her jaw clenched, eyes darting in search of an ally. My family has lived here for generations. We don't need lessons in how to behave, she shouted, clinging to her unraveling authority. But Celeste had already risen to her feet. Her legs trembled, yet her gaze sharpened with resolve. The stares pressing in from all sides no longer crushed her. They fueled her. Something within her had shifted. The timid girl from Detroit was gone. In her place stood a woman forged by struggle, unwilling to break beneath Patricia Hartwell's cruelty. Her voice rang out, clear and strong. You call this social standing? I'll call it what it is. Racism and assault. The word racism crackled through the dining room like a bolt of lightning. Gasps escaped from more than a few mouths. And Patricia's flush of anger instantly drained to a sickly pale. You dare? Patricia hissed, her voice trembling with fury. You dare bring race into this? This has nothing to do with color. This is about class, about proper behavior. You don't belong here. But Celeste did not back down. You told me that someone like me had no place here. You looked at me and decided I wasn't worthy of respect. You struck me because you assumed I was weak and would stay silent. What do you call that? That's reality, Patricia snapped. Some people know their place, and some need to be reminded of it. You clearly fall into the second group. The cruelty in her words made even the diners who had first leaned toward her side grow uneasy, their eyes beginning to drift away. The elderly man who had spoken earlier shook his head with disappointment, his face carrying a flash of disgust. Where's the manager? Patricia suddenly shouted, desperate to reclaim control. I want this woman thrown out immediately. She's disruptive. She's threatening other guests. Her words had barely ended when a man in a tailored suit hurried over, his face tight with concern. Clearly, he was the restaurant's manager. Mrs. Hartwell, he said cautiously, perhaps we should discuss this privately in my office. There's nothing to discuss, Patricia cut him off, her tone imperious. She doesn't belong here. I want her gone at once. The manager's eyes flicked to Celeste, catching the redness in her cheeks, the visible handprint still marking her face. For a moment, his expression faltered. Lowering his voice, he offered, Miss, perhaps I can arrange another table for you in a quieter section. The words pierced Celeste's heart like a blade. Instead of confronting the obvious injustice, the manager chose to move her away, turning the victim into the one who must yield. Outraged but steady, she answered, I'm not going anywhere. I was attacked while sitting at my own table, quietly having dinner. I've done nothing wrong. She's exaggerating, Patricia interjected quickly, twisting the truth. I only brushed her because she became aggressive and made me feel threatened. But the elderly man's voice rang out again, firm and resolute. The mark on her face says otherwise. And, if necessary, I'll testify to it. Patricia spun around, her eyes blazing. No one asked for your opinion, old man. This is between me and the woman who thinks she can con her way into places like this. The word con hit Celeste's ears like another slap. Her voice caught as she asked, You think I con my way here? Patricia sneered. Oh, the mysterious husband who always disappears. The tragic little story meant to convince people you belong. I know exactly why you're here, to snag a wealthy man. Or worse, to stage something and sue for money. But let me make this clear, no one's buying it. The accusations were so outrageous they rattled the entire room. But instead of retreating, this time, Celeste felt her anger ignite, burning away her fear. You don't know a thing about me, she shot back, her voice ringing so strongly it startled even herself. You build cheap assumptions out of prejudice and ignorance. And when I don't bow, you turn to violence. That says everything about you, not me. Patricia's face twisted with rage. Character. You dare lecture me about character while you sit here pretending to be a lady in a restaurant you could never afford? You even invented a husband who doesn't exist. The last words froze the entire room into silence. Patricia frowned, and then her expression flickered with unease. Celeste turned, and her heart clenched. Adrien was walking toward them. He strode with an electric force, his tall frame radiating a storm contained in every step. His jaw was tight, his green eyes blazing like blades cutting through the air. The restrained fury around him dropped the temperature of the room in an instant. Some diners instinctively leaned aside, as though afraid the fire in his gaze might burn them. Patricia, for a fleeting moment, misunderstood. She smiled with triumph, convinced Adrien had come to support her. Raising her voice so the entire restaurant could hear, she declared, "Thank God. Finally, someone who sees sense. Sir, please tell her to leave this place immediately. She's been disruptive since the moment she walked in." Adrien stopped beside Celeste, his eyes locked on Patricia. His voice came low, but it carried across the room like steel striking stone. "You put your hand on my wife?" Spago erupted in stunned silence. Patricia's smile froze, then slowly dissolved as his words sank in. Your wife?" she stammered, her face draining of color, the layers of expensive makeup suddenly exposed like a mask. Adrien laid a gentle hand on Celeste's shoulder, tender with her but unyielding toward Patricia, his gaze sharp as a predator's. At 6'2", Adrien's presence dominated the space around him. He enunciated each word with icy precision. "My wife, Celeste Williams. The woman you just struck in front of everyone here." A wave of gasps swept through the dining room, the sound like a chorus of shock. In that single instant, the balance shifted entirely. The restaurant buzzed with whispers that popped and crackled like kernels in a pan. Phones were raised in unison, some guests searching Google, others firing off frantic messages. "Adrien Williams," one voice rang out clearly enough for all to hear. "Oh my God, Adrien Williams of Nexus Innovations, the tech billionaire." The revelation spread like wildfire. And in a heartbeat, no one in the room doubted the reality. Patricia Hartwell had just committed the gravest mistake of her life. She had laid hands on the wife of one of the most powerful men in America. Patricia's legs seemed to buckle. She gripped the back of a chair to keep from collapsing. Her face, once perfectly made up, was pale as wax beneath the golden lights, her expression raw with terror. Her manicured hand trembled at her throat as she whispered, I didn't know." But realizing how pathetic that sounded, she scrambled to amend. She didn't look like. Didn't look like what? Didn't look like what? Adrien's voice cut her short, sharp as a blade. Didn't look like someone worthy of basic respect? Didn't look like she had the right to exist in the same space as you? He stepped forward, fully shielding Celeste with his body, radiating an uncompromising protectiveness. Each word landed like a hammer blow, and Patricia recoiled, her eyes darting in panic for an escape. But there was none. Every table, every gaze, was locked on her. The manager, who had been frozen since Adrien's arrival, finally stumbled forward. "Mr. Williams, I sincerely apologize. If I had known Mrs. Williams was your wife, this never would have." "If you had known?" Adrien snapped, turning his ice-cold stare on him. "You mean my wife only deserves protection once you realize who she is? That violence is acceptable as long as the victim isn't wealthy enough?" The manager's face broke into sweat despite the cool air. "No, sir, absolutely not. That is not what I meant. We value all of our guests equally." Adrien tilted his head, voice firm and cutting. "Clearly, not all." His hand brushed the reddened mark on Celeste's cheek, a gesture of tenderness that contrasted with the fury burning in his eyes. A few women in the room audibly gasped, as if they were watching a scene from a film too tense to breathe through. Patricia, desperate, stammered, I didn't know. She was dressed, so plain. How was I supposed to?" The mistake was fatal. That single sentence sealed her ruin. Adrien's eyes turned to ice. His voice dropped lower, every word heavy as stone. "So, you admit it. You judged my wife by her clothes, decided that because she chose simplicity, she didn't deserve respect. You truly believe appearance gives you the right to strip someone of their dignity?" Patricia shook her head, her voice quivering. No, that's not what I meant." But everyone could see the truth written across her pale, stricken face. "Then explain it, Mrs. Hartwell," Adrien pressed, emphasizing her name with deliberate force. The room held its breath. "What gave you the right to march to my wife's table, humiliate her, degrade her publicly, and finally lay hands on her?" Hearing her own name from his mouth left Patricia reeling. Her jaw dropped. We've never met. How do you know who I am?" Adrien smiled coldly. "I always know who holds influence in this city. And more importantly, I always know who threatens my family. Your husband, Gregory Hartwell, owns Hartwell Properties. Your family invests in businesses across Beverly Hills. You sit on the boards of 3 charities and like to call yourself a pillar of this community. Every detail Adrien laid out drained more color from Patricia's face. And then, with finality, he said, "But you have one more reputation, Mrs. Hartwell, the kind built on using your status to bully anyone you think is beneath you. Tonight, that ends." His words landed like a hammer, silencing the entire room. Only the faint jazz music lingered, a mocking soundtrack to the unfolding tragedy. "Please, please forgive me," Patricia sobbed, her expensive mascara running in messy black streaks. "I made a mistake. I truly didn't expect to be caught." Adrien cut her off coldly. "You had no hesitation when you mocked, when you humiliated, when you raised your hand against someone you thought couldn't fight back. The only thing you never intended was to face the consequences." Celeste looked at her husband, her chest swelling with both admiration and unease. She had never seen Adrien unleash his full authority this way, especially in defense of the woman he loved. The sight made her tremble and glow with pride all at once. "Adrien," Celeste whispered, her hand resting on his arm, feeling the tension of muscles coiled tight, ready to strike. Maybe we should." "No," Adrien interrupted, his tone like steel, though his gaze softened when it turned to her. "You were attacked. In public. By someone who believed you would stay silent. This isn't something we swallow and move on from." He turned back to Patricia, who was now trembling, her sobs shaking her entire frame. "Mrs. Hartwell, you have one chance left to tell the truth. Why did you think hitting my wife was acceptable?" Patricia stammered, her lips cracked and dry. She didn't look like someone who belonged here. I misunderstood." "Misunderstanding is your excuse for a slap," Adrien snapped. Patricia scrambled for footing. I barely touched her," but the pitiful defense crumbled in the silence. "The welt on her cheek says otherwise," the older man by the window called out, his voice ringing clear as a bell. "And I'll gladly testify in court if necessary." The word court fell like an axe. Patricia staggered, her face blanching. "Court? No. We can handle this privately, between civilized people." Adrien's voice cut like iron. "Civilized people don't assault others in restaurants. Civilized people don't judge based on skin color or clothing. Civilized people don't use wealth as a license to trample on human dignity." The room seemed to freeze. Phones were lifted high, cameras recording every second. Celeste suddenly realized, in just hours, this scene would flood social media, spreading everywhere. And instead of fear, an unexpected surge of satisfaction rose inside her. "Let the world see Patricia Hartwell for who she really is," Adrien's voice carried, echoing through every corner. Then he looked directly at the crowd, his expression resolute. "If you had witnessed this, what would you have done? Have you ever stood up to a bully?" The silence grew heavier. Even the phones shook in people's hands, like the beating pulse of dozens of witnesses. Patricia was no longer the powerful, pristine woman in her white Chanel dress. Her voice cracked into broken pleas. "Please spare me. My family, my husband. If this gets out..." Adrien's reply was merciless, each word sharp and cold. "You should have thought of your family before you struck my wife. Your consequences won't vanish because of money or status." Terror consumed Patricia. Mascara streaked down her face, leaving her looking more like a fallen figure than the queen of society she imagined herself to be. Some diners shook their heads, unsure if they should feel grim satisfaction or pity at her collapse. "You don't understand," Patricia gasped. "This will destroy everything my family has built. My husband's reputation, my children's future. Please, give me another way out." Adrien's gaze didn't waver, his eyes like a cold flame. "The same way you thought about my wife's feelings when you mocked her? The same way you considered the consequences before raising your hand to strike her?" Celeste looked at him, astonished. She had seen Adrien negotiate billion-dollar deals, had watched him command entire boards of powerful men. But this raw fury, personal and unmasked, was something new. It was the anger of a man protecting his family. And in her eyes, it made him both fearsome and radiant. "Celeste," Adrien said gently now, though his eyes still locked on Patricia, "tell everyone here, from beginning to end, exactly what happened. Celeste drew in a trembling breath, her fingers brushing the lingering heat of the mark on her cheek. The pain had dulled, but the humiliation remained. I was sitting at this table, waiting for my husband, she began, her voice soft but carrying across the silent room. Mrs. Hartwell came to me and insisted there was a mistake, that I didn't belong here, that people like me had no place in a setting like this. Several diners nodded, recalling the start of it all. The older man kept watching closely, his expression weighted with disappointment. She mocked my clothes, called them cheap, Celeste continued. She said, I was only playing a role, pretending to be someone I wasn't. When I told her I was waiting for my husband, she laughed, said it was just a made-up story. Each word sliced away another layer of Patricia's mask. Her face cracked, her mouth stumbling. I didn't mean, but her voice was hollow, empty even to her own ears. Celeste lifted her chin, her eyes meeting Patricia's for the first time since Adrien had appeared. She accused me of scheming, said I was here to seduce a wealthy man or to find an excuse to sue this restaurant. She said I was pathetic, that I should leave before humiliating myself further. Gasps rose across the room, diners finally grasping the full cruelty of Patricia's words. And, when I refused to leave, Celeste's voice was unwavering now. She screamed in my face, told me to remember my place, and then she slapped me. The plainness of her recounting hit harder than any embellishment could. The truth stood naked, undeniable. Adrien squeezed her hand, his gaze softening at his wife but blazing when it turned to Patricia. What my wife hasn't said, he declared, is that this wasn't the first time she's endured prejudice like this. Her whole life has been marked by it. Celeste stared at him, surprised. They had spoken about her past in private, but never had he voiced it aloud. Adrien lifted his head, his voice resonant, like a verdict in a courtroom. My wife grew up in Detroit. Her father died when she was 8. Her mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table. Celeste began working at 14, helping her family while keeping straight A's. She went on to Wayne State University, putting herself through school while working nights in a diner, weekends at a laundromat. She graduated valedictorian in education, and she dedicated her career to teaching underprivileged children how to read. The caricature Patricia had tried to paint, a gold digger, was shattered, replaced by the truth of a woman defined by sacrifice and principle. Adrien's voice softened, full of pride. 3 years ago, when I met her, Celeste was making $28,000 a year and still spent half her vacations teaching literacy for free. She never once asked me for a thing. When I proposed, she begged to finish out her semester with her students. When we married, she donated her entire wardrobe to a women's shelter. Celeste's eyes blurred with tears. Not from shame now, but from love and gratitude. Adrien gestured toward her simple navy dress. The dress she's wearing tonight, she chose it for comfort, because she refuses to waste money on extravagance when there are families in need. She owns an entire closet of gowns I bought her, but she prefers to dress as she did the day I fell in love with her, the woman who would rather spend $1,000 feeding hungry families than on a designer handbag. At last, Patricia's legs gave out and she collapsed into the chair she had been clinging to. Her complete breakdown made the room exhale as one, yet silence held steady. The entire restaurant had just witnessed justice delivered not in a courtroom, but in truth, laid bare before their very eyes. Patricia Hartwell's perfect facade was gone. In front of everyone, she was nothing more than a broken woman, finally beginning to grasp the true cost of cruelty. Adrien turned squarely toward her, his voice cold and steady as a judge's gavel. You judged my wife by the color of her skin and by the clothes she wore. You decided that because she wasn't dressed in luxury, she wasn't worthy of basic respect. And you struck her because you assumed she had no way to fight back. I'm sorry, Patricia whispered, her voice ragged, trembling so much it was barely audible. I didn't know, Adrien cut her off, his eyes sharp as steel. Didn't know she was married to someone who could destroy your social standing? Or didn't know she was already a human being who deserved kindness, no matter what? The distinction was so stark that the room held its breath. Any excuse now would only dig her grave deeper. Adrien drew a slow breath, his tone shifting as he began to recount. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a little coffee shop in Westwood, exhausted, questioning whether anything I had built still mattered. I happened to overhear a young woman, then a stranger, talking with a barista about illiteracy rates in poor communities. Her voice was full of passion, her eyes lit with conviction. I sat there listening, and in that moment, I knew I was witnessing something rare. His lips curved with the faintest smile at the memory. That day, she was wearing a $15 dress from Target and shoes that had been worn by others before her. But Celeste was radiant, radiant in her honesty, her simplicity, in the way she made others believe in the possibility of good. When I finally found the courage to speak to her, she spent 20 minutes talking about her students before she ever once asked what I did for a living. The room was silent, swept up in the quiet power of his words. Celeste felt her heart quiver, her eyes blur with tears. Even in the middle of this storm, Adrien was telling their love story. He continued, "When she found out I was wealthier than she could have imagined, her first question wasn't about houses or cars or bank accounts. She asked if I could help fund a literacy program for poor children. To her, money meant nothing unless it created opportunity for someone else." Tears spilled down Patricia's cheeks at last, her hands covering her face as if she could hide from the truth. Around the room, other diners were visibly moved, wiping at their eyes as they listened to the story of a love rooted in sincerity, of a woman once dismissed but who had given her youth to teaching and lifting others. Adrien's voice tightened, cutting through the emotion as he fixed his eyes on Patricia. "That is the woman you attacked. The woman you dismissed as unworthy of respect. And now you will learn what consequences feel like." The room seemed heavy as thunderclouds, the air waiting to break. Yet when Adrien turned his gaze back to Celeste, it softened, the storm receding into tenderness. His green eyes shone with love. "Does it hurt much?" He lifted her face gently in his large hands, fingertips brushing the raw, stinging mark on her cheek. The gesture was reverent, delicate, as if he were holding porcelain. "It just burns a little," Celeste whispered, leaning into his palm, "but I'm all right." Adrien's jaw flexed, his voice low with restrained fury. "You should never have had to go through this. I should have been by your side." Celeste clasped his hand, her eyes steady and luminous. "You don't need to regret it. I didn't back down. I stood tall, and I'm proud of that." A proud smile flickered across Adrien's face. "You were extraordinary. I have never been prouder to call you my wife than I am right now." The moment was interrupted by a quiet cough. The manager, Robert, stood nervously, his face pale but attempting dignity. "Mr. Williams, I offer my deepest apologies. This is not the kind of environment we ever want to create. Our restaurant is committed to respecting all of our guests." Adrien kept his arm protectively around Celeste, his gaze unbroken. "I know your staff aren't responsible for a customer's behavior, but how you handle this will determine whether my family ever feels safe dining here again." Robert nodded rapidly. "We'll do everything necessary to make this right. Please allow us to come tonight's dinner, and I will personally ensure you are treated with the utmost care whenever you return." Adrien inclined his head slightly. "That's a start. But what matters most is making sure this never happens to anyone else." Patricia suddenly lifted her tear-streaked face, seizing at hope. "Yes, exactly. This was just an unfortunate incident, a misunderstanding. We can put it behind us and move forward." Adrien cut her off at once. "There was no misunderstanding. This was a deliberate choice, rooted in prejudice and arrogance. You only call it a misunderstanding now because you discovered your victim wasn't as powerless as you believed." Celeste squeezed Adrien's hand, sensing his fury rising again. She knew it was time to turn the moment toward something larger. "Adrien," she said softly, "may I say something?" His eyes softened instantly. "Of course. This is your story more than anyone's." Celeste rose, Adrien still holding her close, and faced the room. Dozens of eyes fixed on her, some filled with sympathy, others with shame, all waiting. "Please understand," Celeste began, her voice clear and calm. "What happened tonight was not about money or status. It was about dignity. Mrs. Hartwell had no idea whose wife I was when she judged me. She only saw my appearance and decided she had the right to degrade me." Her gaze swept across the diners. "The issue isn't that she failed to recognize me as the wife of a billionaire. The issue is that she believed treating anyone this way was acceptable. If I had been a single mother saving up for one special night out, would her actions have been any less wrong?" The silence that followed was heavy, and many lowered their heads in reflection. Celeste pressed on. "I grew up poor. I know what it feels like to be judged for how you look. I know the weight of being told you don't belong, of being forced to believe you're less. Tonight, Mrs. Hartwell slapped me because she thought I'd stay silent. but my worth, and anyone's worth, doesn't come from the money in a bank account or the label on a dress. Real worth comes from how we treat each other, from what we give back to the world." Applause broke out, first from the elderly man who had spoken in her defense, then spreading across the room. It wasn't loud, but it was sincere. Celeste bowed her head slightly. "Thank you." Then she turned directly to Patricia. "I accept your apology. But apology alone isn't enough. Actions have consequences, and those consequences must carry meaning." Patricia lifted her gaze, hope trembling in her eyes. Celeste's voice rang steady. "I want you to spend the next 6 months volunteering at a literacy center for underprivileged children. Let the hands you use to humiliate others become hands that give opportunity. That is how you begin to make this right." Her eyes bore into Patricia's. "Tonight, I want you to truly look into the faces of the people you once despised. I want you to learn that worth and dignity are not privileges reserved for the wealthy." The restaurant fell silent again, every word hanging in the air. Patricia stammered, Volunteer? I don't know anything about that." Celeste's gaze was unflinching. "Then, you will learn. You will learn how to serve others instead of demanding to be served. You will learn what character truly means." Adrien looked down at his wife, admiration radiating openly. "Perfect," he murmured. "Justice must come with purpose." Celeste continued, her voice firm. "And if you refuse, or if you twist the volunteer work into a vanity project to polish your image, then my husband and I will pursue every legal avenue available. We will make sure the world knows exactly who you are." The warning landed like a hammer blow. Patricia understood she had only one choice: true atonement through service, or destruction through law and public judgment. I'll do it," she stammered, her voice breaking. "I'll volunteer. I'll do whatever it takes." Celeste gave a small nod. "Good. Because this isn't just for you. It's to ensure no one else endures what I did tonight." Adrien bent to kiss the top of her head, whispering, "I love you more than ever." In that moment, Celeste transformed what could have been a scene of vengeance into something far greater, a chance for change. She turned humiliation into the seed of redemption. The restaurant at Spago fell into an eerie hush, as if a fragile morning fog had draped itself across the room. Patricia slumped into her chair, her face streaked with tears and smeared mascara, nodding in desperation. For a fleeting moment, it seemed the evening might end in fragile reconciliation, with a faint hope of change. But then Patricia's phone rang, its sharp tone tearing straight through the silence. She glanced at the screen, and Celeste caught the cold shift in her eyes. The mask of repentance slipped, replaced by the calculating glint so familiar. Patricia scanned the room, dozens of phones still recording, the faces of Beverly Hills elites watching her public collapse. In that instant, she realized the true danger was not just in broken promises, but in the storm of media waiting outside. "Actually," Patricia said, her voice steadier now, tinged with her old arrogance, "I think I need to reconsider." Adrien tightened his arm protectively around Celeste, his eyes like ice. "Reconsider what?" Patricia rose, smoothing the white Chanel dress clinging to her, attempting to rebuild her image of power. But the ruined makeup and the tremor in her hands betrayed her. "All night, I've been threatened and ordered around. But now, I remember who I am and the influence my family carries." Whispers rippled through the tables. Everyone felt that the fragile peace was about to shatter. Celeste tried to keep her tone calm. "Mrs. Hartwell, we gave you the chance to make this right, to learn and to grow." Patricia sneered, her voice cutting. "Learn from who? From a woman who can't even afford the right dress to dine at Spago? You may have tricked your husband into marriage, but I know exactly what kind of woman you are." Her words hit the room like a physical blow. Gasps broke out. Adrien stood frozen, his whole body taut. When he spoke, his voice dropped into a dangerous growl that made the air itself shiver. "What did you just say?" But Patricia seemed fueled by his anger, emboldened by it. She lifted her chin high, her voice booming. "I'm only saying what everyone here is already thinking, but too afraid to admit. Your wife is nothing but a gold digger. This whole story has been one elaborate performance from the start." "Stop," Adrien roared, his voice cracking like thunder. But Patricia had already crossed the point of no return, turning her humiliation into a reckless assault. "No, I will not stay silent. This isn't about dignity. This is about an unknown nobody seducing a billionaire and thinking she's untouchable." Celeste felt each word sink into her chest like a blade. The accusations weren't just cruel. They attacked the very core of her marriage, the belief that Adrien loved her for who she truly was. Patricia was weaponizing the very insecurities Celeste had buried deep, and she wasn't finished. She planned it all, Patricia pressed on, her voice sharp. That Westwood coffee shop? A setup. The story about poverty, the 3 jobs, the teaching children? Classic manipulation, designed to tug at heartstrings. And you, Adrien, you fell for it like every other rich man desperate for a savior's fantasy. Celeste reeled, her world spinning. She knew Adrien understood the truth, but hearing her life twisted into a con made her stomach churn with a pain worse than any slap. Patricia, reveling in her cruelty, continued. Every detail is theater. Her simplicity, her refusal to flaunt wealth, it's all calculated to make you believe she's different. But she's nothing more than the best actress you've ever met. Adrien shook with rage. You're insane. Patricia let out a rasping, mocking laugh. Am I? Then explain this. How does a supposedly pure woman slip so easily into the life of mansions, private jets, and lavish parties? How does she adapt so seamlessly to the very world she pretends to disdain? The twisted questions struck Celeste in her most vulnerable place. They brushed against her private doubts, whether her simplicity had begun to fade in Adrien's world of excess. Patricia saw the flicker of pain across Celeste's face and lunged at it. See, Adrien? She fooled you from day one. A carefully built performance, perfected down to the last detail. And you, the sharpest man in the room, turned out to be her easiest mark. Adrien's jaw clenched so hard, the muscles in his neck quivered. You don't know what you're talking about. But Celeste heard something new in his tone, not just fury, but a thread of hurt woven through it. Patricia laughed again, the sound harsh, scraping against the air. Oh, I know plenty. I've seen dozens of women like her. They study their target, learn how to strike the right nerves, spin the perfect sob story until the man is caught. Your wife doesn't love you, Adrien. She loves your bank account and everything that comes with it. The restaurant sank into silence, but no longer the tense curiosity from earlier. Now it was thick with discomfort, suffocating in its cruelty. Many turned their heads away, unable to watch the vicious spectacle unfold. Still, Patricia pressed on, her voice like a blade. The literacy program, the donated clothes, all of it is branding. A facade to convince you she's genuine. But tell me, since marrying you, what has she sacrificed? What has she given up? She lives in luxury while maintaining the illusion of humility. Celeste felt tears welling, but they weren't the tears of humiliation anymore. They were tears of deep, aching grief, because someone had twisted her most private insecurities into weapons against her. Patricia lowered her tone, as if whispering a secret, though her words rang across the entire room. Every smile, every look of gratitude, every gesture that seemed selfless, it was all carefully designed to make you believe you had a saint, when in truth, you have nothing but a cunning opportunist. The silence that followed was suffocating. Patricia stood there, panting, her face flushed with a feverish satisfaction, convinced she had landed the killing blow. The diners sat frozen, as if watching a car crash they couldn't stop. Adrien looked at his wife, and in his eyes, Celeste saw something she had never seen before. Not doubt, but a search for reassurance. And that brief moment pierced her like a dagger. She never doubted their love. But she realized something crushing. No matter how deeply they loved one another, there would always be people like Patricia ready to plant seeds of suspicion, ready to force her to prove her worth over and over again. The recognition shattered something inside her. A crack spread through her chest, like ice breaking across a frozen lake. The weight of humiliation, pain, and exhaustion from years of judgment surged all at once, choking her. "Stop," Celeste whispered. Just one word, but it sliced through the suffocating air like a blade. She pulled herself from Adrien's protective embrace, the sudden movement making him falter. Her eyes lifted, shimmering with unshed tears, glowing with both pain and exhaustion. "Celeste," Adrien murmured, reaching for her, but she shook her head. "No." Her voice was stronger now, but soaked in weariness. "I can't keep living like this. I can't keep defending my love, my motives, my very existence against people who already decided what I am." Patricia sat watching, a cruel smile playing on her lips, certain she had finally cut deep enough to break the marriage apart. Adrien pleaded, his voice breaking. "Don't let her do this. Don't let her poison mean more than the 3 years we've built together. Celeste's voice cracked with anguish. It's not just about her words. It's the truth that this will never end. There will always be another Patricia. Always someone ready to look at me and assume the worst. Always another moment where I'm forced to prove I deserve to be loved. The murmurs in the room shifted into real discomfort. Many diners shut off their phones, no longer eager to record another second. What had begun as spectacle now felt like trespassing on someone's pain. Celeste, you don't have to prove anything, Adrien pleaded. Not to her, not to anyone. Oh, don't I? Celeste's voice broke out, sharp and trembling. Look at them. Half this room is wondering if she was right. The other half is questioning how much of my story is real. Adrien froze because they both knew she wasn't entirely wrong. I'm tired, Celeste whispered, her voice heavy with tears. Tired of walking into every room bracing for judgment? Tired of living like I'm wearing a flawless mask? Tired of proving again and again that I deserve to stand beside you? At that moment, Patricia interjected with a bitter laugh. Finally, someone speaks the truth. This play has worn us all out. Be quiet, Adrien roared, his eyes locked on his wife, no longer sparing Patricia a glance. Celeste, please don't let her win. Don't let her tear us apart. She hasn't destroyed anything, Celeste said, shaking her head. She only forced me to face the truth I've been avoiding for 3 years, that I will never truly belong in your world. And I am exhausted from pretending. The room sank into a funeral silence. Adrien staggered as if struck in the chest. That's not true, he begged. You belong with me. You belong anywhere I am. Celeste's voice trembled. Do I? When even you, before we left the house tonight, hoped I'd change my dress. Hoped I'd look the part of a billionaire's wife. You never forced me, but the pressure was always there. Protecting me isn't the same as accepting me. Adrien stood stricken, the truth in her words cutting deep. I only wanted to keep you from nights like this. But I can't spend my life hiding from every Patricia Hartwell behind designer clothes and fake smiles. Celeste sighed. I can't live a life built only to defend myself. Then, the elderly man who had spoken up earlier rose again, steady and firm. His voice carried across the room. Young lady, I've been married 53 years. And what I've learned is this. Love isn't about fitting into someone else's world. It's about building a world together. She struck you because she envied what you have. Authenticity, dignity, and a love money can't buy. The room fell silent once more. Patricia started to speak, but the old man's stern gaze silenced her. He turned back to Celeste. Tonight, I saw you hold your dignity even under attack. I saw your husband look at you as a true partner, not an ornament. That kind of love can't be false. The question isn't whether you belong in his world. The question is whether you let others' prejudice dictate how you live and how you love. Tears streamed down Celeste's face, but these were no longer bitter. They were tears of recognition and hope. Adrien waited, breathless. I love you, Adrien, Celeste whispered. I love you so much it terrifies me. But I can't keep fighting to prove that love is real to people who will never believe it. Then don't, Adrien answered instantly, his voice firm. Don't fight for them. Fight for us. Choose us. The restaurant held its breath. Love, fear, and the weight of choice hung between two people who had already endured 3 years of trials. Everything rested on Celeste's answer. She looked into Adrien's green eyes and saw not judgment, not doubt, but unwavering love. In that crystalline moment, she understood she had to decide, live by the gaze of strangers, or live for the man who had placed his entire heart in her hands. The old man's words echoed again. Love isn't living in someone else's world. It's building one of your own. And suddenly, Celeste realized the crack inside her wasn't breaking. It was opening, like a seed splitting so new life could grow. Patricia's venom had forced her to confront the fears that had shackled her for 3 long years. Phew, you're right, Celeste said, her voice soft at first, then sure with every word. I've been fighting the wrong battle. I tried to prove myself to people who were never going to accept me. But all I ever needed to do was live the life I choose, with the man I love. Hope lit Adrien's face like dawn breaking through storm clouds. I choose us, Celeste declared, stepping toward him. I choose this love, this life, this future. And I choose to stop caring what people like Patricia Hartwell think. Adrien swept her into his arms, holding her with the strength of a man who had nearly lost everything. "I love you," he whispered, voice breaking. "More than breath itself, more than anything. We'll face it all together. Always together." Celeste rested her head against his chest, feeling those words burn into her very being. Patricia, watching in disbelief, realized her cruel gamble had backfired. Instead of tearing the marriage apart, she had only made it stronger. Her face drained of color as Adrien turned to her, his voice a verdict. "You revealed who you truly are. Once when you thought my wife was powerless, and again when you tried to shatter our marriage. Both will carry consequences." As if on cue, two security men in dark suits strode in, their steps decisive. "Mr. Williams," the lead one asked, "is this the woman who assaulted Mrs. Williams?" Adrien nodded. "She is." Patricia trembled as the men flanked her, while the manager bowed repeatedly, stammering apologies. "The Beverly Hills police are waiting to take your statement," one guard informed her. Panic seized Patricia. She thrashed, shouting, "This is a misunderstanding. You can't take me. My husband will sue you all." Adrien's voice dripped with scorn. "Your husband should worry about something else. Next week, Nexus Innovations will cancel its $200 million headquarters contract with Hartwell Properties. Bankruptcy may be a fitting price for arrogance." Patricia crumpled into her chair, sobbing. "I have children, please. Think of them. You should have thought of them before you struck my wife," Adrien said coldly. "And even when Celeste offered you redemption through service, you spat on it by trying to destroy our marriage. That chance is gone." The old man stepped forward again, his voice unwavering. "We saw everything. If necessary, my wife and I, and many others here, will testify." Nods and affirmations rose around the room. Celeste's eyes shimmered with gratitude. "Thank you. Thank you all." As Patricia was escorted out, still wailing in despair, Adrien turned to his wife, voice gentle again. "Let's go home. Tonight has been enough." But Celeste's eyes shone. "No, we're staying. We came here for dinner together, and that's exactly what we'll do. I won't let Patricia win, not even halfway." Adrien looked at her and chuckled proudly. "You know, I think I'm falling for you all over again." They returned to their table. And this time, the eyes that followed were not scornful or curious, they were filled with respect. The story of this night would ripple through Beverly Hills high society, but Celeste no longer cared. She had chosen love over fear, truth over pretense, herself over false acceptance. 3 months later, Patricia Hartwell was sentenced to community service and ordered to attend anger management classes. Hartwell Properties collapsed, forcing her family to sell their mansion and leave the center of Beverly Hills. But none of that mattered to Celeste and Adrien. That night at Spago, they had faced the harshest trial of all and walked out hand in hand, stronger than ever. And that was the night when dignity, love, and truth rose above arrogance and prejudice. What do you think? Would you have stood as firmly as Celeste did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories of love, courage, and justice.